Hi, this is Jane from the Compassion Project, and I am honored to be here today with Neil Schori from Aurora, Illinois. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
Neil is such a good person.
Mm.
He is kind-hearted and devoted to making a difference in this world. He is a husband of 18 years to his beautiful wife, Brandy, and father to his three daughters, Hannah, who's 16, Mia and Ava, who are twins, that are 12. He has been a pastor at the Edge Church since October 2007, and also works closely with the organization New Life for Haiti, which really interests me. My goodness. Neil also has a master's degree in counseling from Lincoln Christian University, where he graduated in 2000. But most importantly, Neil is driven to bring awareness to domestic violence. He has been an advocate for victims of domestic violence since an incident that occurred in 2007. And it's interesting because Neil and I met years ago, 2012, we just talked about this, at a pool in Mexico. And we just had a connection. I think it was like the last day, and we ended up exchanging like Facebook, and we stayed in touch. And like, you're incredible what you're doing. And this morning I watched a sermon that you did because I thought I need to learn more about what Neil does. I was blown away. I almost started crying. So I'd love it if you could share a bit about that incident that really got you passionate into helping domestic violence and awareness.
Yes, thank you for the generous introduction too, by the way. So yes, I in 2007 I had been counseling a woman named Stacy Peterson, and on and off her husband Drew Peterson as well. And I counseled them probably since the end of 2005 or early 2006. I didn't understand exactly everything that was going on, but I knew there was something unhealthy. First of all, there was a 30-year age difference between the two. So that meant that when they got together, Drew was 47 and Stacy was 17. So obviously right there, that's a big red flag. But they were together, and they came to me for what they kind of like pitched to me as just regular marital issues. So I just accepted that at face value initially. So after multiple counseling sessions, we'll fast forward to August 31st, 2007, sitting outside of a coffee shop in the Chicago suburbs. Stacy had contacted me the previous day, and she asked if there was any way I could possibly meet the next morning. And she sounded urgent. And I looked, I remember opening up my calendar on my computer. I looked at Outlook, and I actually did have space in the morning. So I said, sure, we could meet at the Starbucks down the street from the church and down the street from your house. So we agreed, and we met there. And about an hour into our conversation, there was just I just felt all sorts of sadness and tension from her. And I sensed that she wanted to say something more. And she said, I want to tell you something. And I said, I mean, we've been talking all this time, but yeah, you can share something with me if you'd like. If there's something else you need to share, feel free to share it. But no pressure. It's totally okay. You can, or you don't have to.
Yeah.
So she kind of meandered around that a little bit. And finally she looked at me, and she just blurted out, "He did it." And I said, I'm sorry, he did what? And she said, Drew killed Kathleen Savio. And
Kathleen Savio, was that his wife from before?
Kathleen Savio was Drew Peterson's third wife. Stacy was his fourth wife.
Oh my goodness.
So on this day, she's telling me that her current husband, murdered his previous wife. And I don't know. I remember thinking, I've heard a lot of things in counseling sessions before, but definitely nothing like this. And the first thing, all I could muster was, basically, I said, what would you like me to do with this information? And I asked her,
can I ask you, were you a pastor at the time, or doing counseling mainly?
Well, I was doing both in my role as a counseling pastor at a church right down the street. So that's how I knew Stacy and Drew Peterson.
Oh, okay.
It was a large church in the suburbs, and they hired me as a counseling pastor. So that was my full-time role
Oh, okay.
was meeting and counseling with couples.
So you were fairly young then at this time.
I was pretty new into ministry, helping people. And it was, yeah, I got thrown into the deep end really early. And honestly, I'll just be really direct. I didn't know what to do. I was just shell shocked. Didn't know what to do, completely out of my league. I was never taught this in my seminary. It's no condemnation on them. No organization's perfect, but I didn't know what to do. And so I asked her, I said, what would you like me to do? And she said very clearly, she said, I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to know it. And there was a real sadness that just came from her as she said that. And I remember thinking, she knows so much. There's so much going on in her eyes and how she communicated. And there were just silent tears streaming down her face. I'll never forget how she sat and told me that. She pulled one of her knees up to her chest and just like, it was the self-soothing kind of position she was in. And it was overwhelmingly sad. And so I did what she asked me to do. It's the only thing I knew to do was just to keep it quiet.
I don't know, and I'm not sure if you mentioned that her husband was a police officer.
He was a sergeant, so he was a very well-known police officer in the area. At the time, pretty darn well respected too. There was this feeling of, what do you do? What do you do when you need the police to help you, but the police are your enemy, right? I think that's a question a lot of people are asking today with everything going on in our world. Like, what do we do? Yeah. What do we do when the police are scary? And that was definitely the question that Stacy had at the time. What do I do when my husband is my tormentor? He's the one that I'm afraid of. Who do I go to?
Right. But were you aware when you were talking with her at that time, were you aware that there was any abuse? Like you said, it seemed normal marital problems. So then.
Right.
There'd be this huge red flag of like.
Right. Yeah, I knew there were unhealthy dynamics. We talked about jealousy. He admitted to being a very jealous person. He said on a regular basis, he said, I have to track her and see where she's going because, he goes, I'm not a good looking man. Like she's probably out there looking for some other guys. And he would say it in this joking way, but I could feel the control in his tone, and I could see her nervous reaction when he'd say that. So I knew there were underlying dynamics, but no, there was never a disclosure of abuse by Stacy to me about Drew.
That's crazy.
Yes.
So then what happened after that? You held the information and then?
I held the information almost exactly 2 months to the day. So that was August 31st, October 28th of the same year. So 2 months later, I got a message from a coworker, a text message that just said, read the front page of the Chicago Tribune. It says Stacy Peterson's missing. And immediately I just knew in my heart of hearts, she was letting me know that something was going to happen to her too. It was a day I'll never forget. I dropped my phone. I ran up the stairs in our house, found my wife. I grabbed her and hugged her. And I told her, I said, I know what happened. I know, now I can go to the police and talk to them. Interestingly enough, I tried to. I went. The state police set up a tip line, and I called immediately. And I said, "Hey, I've got some information. You set up this tip line. You want to talk to me?" They didn't call me back. I called again. They didn't call me back. So I went there in person, and they said, "Well, if we want to talk to you, we'll get back to you later." So it took me like 4 times of going to them and reaching out to try to finally get a response. So it took it was a long process. Long and very dysfunctional process.
And she was never found, right?
To this day, Drew is the only suspect in her disappearance, but she's unfortunately never been found.
Oh, that's so sad. I can't even imagine. And I just think about a lot of us, like here's this woman going through all this, and I like the line, what you don't know that you don't know about this person, about the situation, about something like, and because a lot of us we have our issues, we put on our happy face. We go out in the world and, how are you today? Oh, good. Everything's good. Actually, you're falling apart inside, but we're all good.
Just keep smiling, right?
And for her, it's so sad. So that's a lot for you as a young pastor and counselor to deal with. And then he did go to prison, though, isn't that right?
He did. It was a long process from that time. So I finally talked to the police, gave all my information. It was a long time of building up a case against him. He was arrested Mother's Day weekend 2009. So he was free a long time. And
Wow.
he did a lot of media appearances and made a lot about himself. He went on everything. I did one major interview on Fox News before I went to trial, but I really tried to keep it to a minimum because I knew that if I say much, if any of my words are even slightly different, even the ones that aren't essential, I'll get taken apart by the defense. So I had to be very, very cautious. But I made the decision to do one major interview, and it was to try to get anyone else who had information to come forward. But unfortunately, she's still missing.
Oh, how sad. So that is really for you. It's interesting how things that happen in our life, we don't know maybe till years later, this one event is going to lead me on a certain path.
Yes.
At the time, you don't know what that is.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
That's what sparked you on this passion for helping domestic violence. Hey?
Oh yes, I never would have. This is never a route I would have chosen, and not because I wouldn't care. I've always been a justice-oriented individual. I've always been wired to care for the downtrodden, care for the oppressed. But this would never have been something that I would have said, "Hey, I want to look more into that." But it found me, and my wiring, my personality type. If anybody studied the Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENFP, so I'm designed to be extroverted, and I'm designed to try to figure out why I'm in situations that I'm in. So I'm always looking for the greater story behind it. So I spent a lot of time looking into that. Spent a lot of time praying and asking God to show me, because I had no idea what was going on. And but a woman named Susan Murphy Milano found me about 2 years later. She was a domestic violence advocate. Her story, powerful, painful story. But she worked in New York City, and in 1989, she found out that her dad, who was a police officer in the Chicago Police Department, went to her mom's house, killed her in the kitchen, and then killed himself. She discovered both of them.
Oh my.
And that day, she decided, and I remember her telling me this when we met for the first time. She said, "Neil, I couldn't save my mom, but I decided from that point on, the rest of my life, I'm going to help save every other woman that I come across." And she did. So she reached out to me and she said, "Hey, I saw your story, and I really think that you could help change the culture in houses of worship, and how churches and synagogues and mosques will respond when they have an abuse disclosure." And so that has been a huge thing for me since then. She really, she was really tough on me, but I needed it. I needed someone to give me the truth, tell me what I did wrong, teach me how to do it, and kind of like just help me get on the path. And she did that.
That's amazing, unbelievable. So, and now this is what's crazy. Look at all that and what you're doing now, and then now here with this global pandemic that we're all dealing with. It's crazy, right?
Totally crazy. And I mean, you've heard of murder hornets, right? In Canada, you've heard of these murder hornets too. Have you heard about that? And
No.
I think it's
oh yes.
Yeah. I'm like, what else? And then I'm like, oh, I heard it's the year of the locust too. So I guess we're getting all the things this year, right?
Well, I was thinking, who had this on their vision board in 2019?
Right.
Nobody.
I've joked about that. I'm like, hey, maybe we should just stop doing these vision things, because like if it turns out like this, oh my gosh, right?
Wow. Well, I do want to say that beautiful Stacy Peterson her life is important, and she is, what happened to her happened for a reason, and so that a lot more women can be saved because of her, which is so important. So, but right now, I mean, you would know more about this than me. I feel like I am very naive. We're talking about this in the way of domestic abuse. I understand it. I know it's out there, but I do live a really good life. I have a very good marriage, married 33 years. And my husband's incredible. We not without our issues that we worked through, but I think in the early years there was more potential for, argument or issues when you're young and finances and all that. But I am naive on until I listened to that sermon of yours about even the statistics. You said 1 in 4 women and 1 in 4 men in the States are victims of violence. I was just like, what?
Right.
It's shocking to me. So now with social distancing, I mean, the domestic violence is rising.
It is. It's significantly worse right now. I just spoke with a shelter in the northern suburbs of Chicago that I'm connected to. I've done some speaking for them to faith leaders in the area, and the number of calls is something like tenfold compared to a year ago at the same time. So I think in some ways going through this and being shut down, like our whole world's been shut down. So we're all a little bit experiencing what it's like to have our freedoms limited, so that we have to stay inside. In some ways, I think this is good because it helps us empathize with what victims of domestic violence go through all the time. They don't have a freedom of movement. They don't have a freedom of anything. So domestic violence it's so much more than just physical violence. Like that's the more obvious kind. But there are so many more subtle forms of domestic abuse that exist that are very, very important to talk about. There's financial control. When a man or a woman gives just a small allowance and says, well, you have $20 to buy the kids food, buy yourself an outfit. It's like, wait a second. We're not in a partnership. There's also control of technology. So it's being kept from going online or having your own social media accounts. There's no freedom there. It's being traced by GPS on all of your devices so that the person can exert power and control over the victim wherever they go. It's so many things. It's psychological terrorism. It's making you question your own view of reality. It's gaslighting. It's all sorts of things that take away agency, that make victims feel as though they just don't really have anything to offer outside of their connection with that one person.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I do think we all know someone, or think maybe someone that is a victim of domestic violence. And like you say, it's from the financial, emotional. It's not always physical. We think we're going to see, oh, she's being abused. No, we don't know. Right. Sometimes they put on just the happiest face and you have no idea. So, but right now for you, maybe even just share a bit how the social distancing is affecting your life, because you got a really good marriage, you got a healthy, healthy life. But when the social distancing happened, how's it affected you and Brandy and the kids?
Ooh, it's probably a lot like a whole lot of other people. We watch this very fast moving change in how we do life happen. And at first I remember it was a Wednesday. And, Sunday for a pastor is always coming. So we're always getting ready for Sunday. And I remember on a Wednesday, there was a news clip of our governor in Illinois. And he said, hey, we're actually not going to allow gatherings of more than 250 on this Sunday. And we're like, well, our church is about that size. So I think we're okay. By Thursday morning, it was down to 100. By Thursday night, it was to 50. And I think by Friday it was 10. So all of a sudden we're sort of gathering and trying to figure out work-wise, like, how do we keep doing this? Like, how quickly can we move everything online? So that's what we had to do, like work-wise. That's how it initially affected us.
So the Edge Church that you were part of, was not online before?
We were online, but not like we had to move everything that we do online very quickly. So, we didn't stream, we just recorded services and posted them after our gatherings. All of our smaller groups that met during the week were not online. So we really had to quickly become a Zoom church and become a Facebook Live church. And we've done that. And it took a lot of work. exciting in some ways to be able to reach more people, but also challenging because we're social and we're made to be with people,
Right.
and it's hard to be
Actually,
away.
Rebecca just posted
Oh
this. It is
yeah.
such an issue in the church, and victims in the church face unique issues in the church if they come out or try to leave.
Oh, yes. And that's, Rebecca, that's such an excellent point. Very true. My burden is to help victims in the church because, unfortunately, victims are so often stigmatized when they leave an abuser because a lot of churches have ideas around divorce wrong. They'll say, oh, to divorce your partner is a sin. It's like, well, hold on a second. So who actually is the one that is breaking the covenant? I would argue that it's the one who's been abusive. If your partner's abusive, you're not doing something wrong by leaving that abuse. It's not, God does not want, I'm 100% convinced, God does not want people to feel stuck and to have to stay with abusers. And he doesn't want your kids to see that either, because unfortunately what we know is when kids are raised around that, boys tend to become abusers and girls tend to go after partners that look like dad.
Wow, it's crazy. Well, and I've done a lot recently of personal growth and learning, and really understand the power of the mind and the brain, especially at the young age. They say from third trimester pregnancy to 7 years, children in the household or environment they grow up in, their program, their subconscious mind, what they hear, what they learn, what they see, and it's so powerful, and it brings them right through to adulthood, those years, early years. Right. And then these people that they don't even realize sometimes what those early years change them and how they go into a relationship and they become abusers or victims of abuse. But it stems from early sometimes.
It does. It does. Most of our personalities formed by the age of 6. So you have to realize, like, that family of origin is so significant in good and or damaging ways. So one thing that I really just highly encourage everybody to do, do check-ins with a therapist. Let's destigmatize the issue of struggling with mental illness. Depression is normal. People have it. Anxiety is normal. Doesn't make you bad. Doesn't make you lack faith. It just makes you human. So I just really, I like to encourage people,
I think it's learning or having the tools. So if you go through a period of depression, anxiety, having the tools so that you know how to come through it, because a lot of people will end up in depression and you don't know how to deal with it. You don't understand that you're pulled into the past, or your brain is you can heal your brain. You can move forward, and you know what I mean? Whether it's listening to positive things or getting out of bed in the morning. And I used to write on my mirror when I went through a bad time about 4 or 5 years ago. I would write on my mirror, I am important. This was to do with something that I was dealing with, nothing to do with marriage, but I was like, or I am enough. And I would listen to YouTube, and I learned that I could actually heal my brain. But a lot of time we don't realize that. So when someone is in depression, you go, oh, well, just work on yourself. No, they need some kind of support or someone to help them.
Oh, it's so important. It's so important because whether we know it or not, I had a supervisor in my counseling program say, and this has always stuck with me. He said, Neil, no matter where you go, you carry your family of origin around with you in your back pocket. That was so powerful to me, because what that really means is sometimes the reactions that you have to something that happens today, it's not actually because of what happened right in front of you. You're taking your memories and your experiences, and you're placing things from the past on the people that you're dealing with in the present. And it's not always fair. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to them. So finding healing is so significant. So thank you for being a proponent for that.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing right now too, is a lot of people are experiencing grief, right? Loss, grief. I mean, from simple things like cancellation, well, not simple, cancellation of graduations, weddings, not being able to attend funerals, not being able to be with their loved ones, losing their jobs. I mean, there is, after this, a lot of grief people are going to have to deal with.
Yes. So much grief. And grief, we have to realize too, grief comes out in different ways. What I've seen typically, and this is certainly not 100%, but women for the most part are more comfortable with feeling sadness. So sadness for most women comes out in healthier ways at first than it does for men. A lot of men feel sadness, but feel safer expressing it with anger. So anger often for men is a cover for sadness. So whatever is the root emotion, we need to take time to dig deep and be introspective and figure out what that is so that we can grieve properly. Otherwise, we crossed over into unhealthy grief, neurotic grief, and
Yeah.
that will come out in all areas of our lives.
I know, that's why it's creating so much stress in the home. And like I was saying, I do feel naive, and I look out at the view, and I I tend to be more like, life is good, life is fun. And yet then there's this side of me that's just, I just feel for people that could be suffering, or women that, or men that could be abused. Or how can the ordinary person help? Are there signs we can look for? At what, like,
Yeah.
what could someone watching that maybe as a friend that they might think, I don't know, like, I hope she's okay, or like, what
Right.
signs are there?
It's tougher during a pandemic because we're cut off from people. So it's harder to read body language on Zoom than it is face to face. But
Right.
one thing that I would say is, if you suspected that a friend or a family member was being abused before, don't ever let yourself think that it's getting better during this shutdown, during this time when they're inside that much more. It's probably getting worse. So
Yeah.
there's some just simple ways. I think just reaching out with a text that doesn't give away what you're thinking, where it's like, hey, are you being abused? Well, 99% of people are going to say no, and get uncomfortable and then probably go underground. But you could say something like, hey, how's your stress level? Is there anything, what's good happening at home? What are you celebrating? What are you sad about? And
Yeah.
people a lot of times will feel safer in those moments to enter into actually what's happening in their lives. So just, being a friend to others, just reaching out, whether it's a Facebook message, a DM. I would, however, encourage people to be cautious in what they write. You always have to assume that if a person's in an abusive situation, that the abuser has access to those text messages or to those DMs. So just be very cautious with what you write, but there are ways that you can show care without giving too much away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. So, anyway, so what is your, personally, what is your greatest concern or challenge right now through all of this?
Greatest concern or challenge? That's a great question. Because my family's doing well, I'm thankful that I don't have to worry a lot about my family, but I still want to make sure to give them attention.
Right.
But I would say overall, my concern for people that have been disconnected from other people for too long, I worry about them. So I have a heavy burden on my heart for people that are disconnected from a sense of community, a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
That's for people in my church community. It's also for people that are victims of abuse. So all those things together, it's just an overall concern for people that need people that don't have them now, or they don't have safe people.
Yeah.
Huge concern in my heart.
I don't think we realized how much we need connection and being part of something. And I don't think the world was really prepared for everything that's going on, right?
Right. There's no way we could be, right? Like this is the craziest thing that I've ever been through. I have a feeling it probably is for most people, because we're experiencing this. It's literally a worldwide grief. Like we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
There are just some people that have an actual boat. It's a safe family. And
Yeah.
there are other people who have boats that have a lot of leaks, and they still need community. They need people surrounding them. So I would just say, just seeking to be a friend to people, reaching out to
Yeah.
someone that you might have talked to more face to face. If that person crosses your mind, take that chance and reach out. That's
Yeah.
right. I would encourage people to do that.
I wonder too, sometimes we have these gut feelings, and there's been a couple times in my life, so a few things that have happened that I go back and I think about, and I'm like, really bothered me that I
Hmm.
didn't take action. And one example was years ago, my kids were little and I was getting groceries, and I was just coming out of the superstore, and this little girl, this beautiful little girl with long blonde hair, was sitting on the swing set out front, and it said, "Do not sit," because it wasn't safe. And the mom was inside looking through the window, yelling at her. And as I was walking with my little girls, I was like, I got that shiver of like that
Mm.
scream at this child. And I was like, and I had my little girls by the hand, and then all the little girl just happy swinging on the little swing, and then the mom just comes flying out, grabs her like this, and pulls her off the string and drags her into Superstore. My whole body was cold. I had my two little girls by the hand, and I didn't know what to do.
Mm.
I should have done something. I have always, there's this part of me that has remembered that, and that I was too
Mm.
afraid to
Mm.
go and call her out. And I had my little girls there, and I left, but I thought no one saw that but me. And
Right.
there's situations in our life where we have that feeling of like, that is wrong. That child is getting abused.
Hmm.
Stand up. But there's that worry what people think, that, oh, I don't, what if, and we, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I've certainly been in that position, and when I think back, I so appreciate your vulnerability in sharing that, because so many times, like, yes, I help victims of domestic violence. I'm far from perfect in how I do it to this day. I'm a lot better than I was, but I do always look back at the story of Stacy Peterson, and I think, man, what
What
if
if,
I had done that? I wish I had known what I know now then. I would have
right?
done something so much different. So
I
I use
know.
that as fuel to make the next right choice now. I could easily get stuck in a shame cycle, though, easily, because what if I could have done something that would have saved her life?
Yeah,
That's a heavy burden as a person to bear,
yeah,
and I could get stuck there.
yeah,
So yes, use that as fuel. That what we can't go back and change what we did, but we can rewrite. We can rewrite our story as we move forward, right?
yeah. And I think we do need to speak up if we're out in the world and you are out and you do see something, go report to someone, say something
Yes,
to someone.
yes.
Maybe, I just think we all need to kind of protect each other. And one thing I've learned from this pandemic and talking to all these people is that we're all connected on a very deep level that I don't think we really realize. Even though we've
Mhm.
lost connection, I feel like there's such I don't know if it's just a connection of love through all of us that we have that, and it's, yeah, I
Yes.
really feel it now. Yeah.
Oh, I do too. I just it just makes me value people that much more. I
Yeah.
realize, yeah, we need each other. We're
Yeah.
made to be with people, and when we don't have people, we're stuck with a lot of times just our own thoughts, and our own thoughts carry us to certain places that aren't always good, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, being aware of your thoughts is very powerful.
Yes.
That's something that a lot of people, I think, need to, once you become aware of how you think and you can
Hmm.
control it and stop the thought and be like, wait, even in your relationship, like with I caught myself doing it. Was it last night? They might say something, and depending on my mood, you could take offense. But if you can catch the
Yes.
thought and not
Yes.
react, if you can just be
Yeah.
like, wait, that's just a thought. He's
Yes.
fine. He's entitled to react or say or do it.
Right.
If he's upset about something, it's not personal,
Right.
but it takes a lot of work.
It does. That's a great point. And Brene Brown speaks a lot to that
Oh,
too.
I
And
love Renee Brown.
I love her, because one of the things that she says is, when you start having thoughts that enter your mind that you wonder about, and you're sitting with someone, sometimes what you need to do, if you can't process it on your own, is say, I need to run something past you. Is that okay? And once you get permission, you say, this is the story that I'm telling myself. So
Right.
then you're
Yeah.
inviting them to tell you what's true. So I love that.
Yeah. That's amazing. Brene Brown. I just wanted to put this up because Rebecca said
Oh,
you. Yeah. You're incredible, Neil. What you're doing, the person you are, I think you're amazing, and super grateful that you came on here. Is there anything else you want to add or say to anyone out there?
yeah, I guess I would love to just speak to people who wonder if there is someone in their life that's being abused. the single greatest thing that you can do, the very single greatest thing is learn to be a good listener. That's the number one thing you can do. Don't try to tell them what to do. That's not going to help, and it's probably going to drive them away from you. So learn to be a good listener. Good listeners are rare, so you'll stand out. And maybe one day that person will then say, you know, I remember that Jane really listened to me well. So I'm gonna talk to her about what's going on, and then you will have earned the ability to help them take a next step if they want that. And for victims, I'd say two things that I'd love for you to remember. You did nothing to cause your abuse. There's nothing that you did that made the person that was supposed to love you the most abuse you. And there's nothing that you can do better to make them stop. The issue is not about you, it's about them. Also remember this, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, you can connect with them by chat, you connect with them by email, or by a phone call if it's safe. And also a website that I'm connected to, and it came from the Stacey Peterson case, documenttheabuse.com. It's a way for you to safely tell your story and then do a video of your story. And what will happen is it will empower you. It's an amazing, cathartic, hard process, but it will empower you to get your voice back. And also, if something happens to you, we will have electronic documentation that will take away the issue of hearsay. So your voice will be heard in court.
Wow. That's amazing. We put the link in the comments for that.
Yes,
hey?
Yes, that'd be great.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we'll sign off.
Yes.
I'd love to have you back on to talk about other things. I definitely would love to learn more. So for another day about Haiti and what's happening there.
Yes, would love to talk about that anytime.
Yeah. So thanks so much, Neil, and blessings to everyone that listened. And we'll post the links in the comments. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay. Sign off. Bye.